Hi, everyone. Is everyone on, M?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Please make sure to introduce yourself in the chat box. You can use your own name or you can use a preferred name or an alias. Only the speakers will be visible on screen, and the others who are attending the webinar will not be visible. So you are safe to include your name in and introduce yourself. And we'll start very quickly in just a few seconds.
So it's like
Great. Okay, so my name is Grace Poor. I'm the Asia Regional Coordinator at Outright Action International. And this webinar is to get a bit of attention from what is going on in Myanmar under the present crisis and what are the implications for LGBT people inside the country. Like everybody else in Myanmar, LGBTQ people are in the grip of the February 1 military coup. And like everybody else, they are facing great uncertainty, great risk, great danger. And like all of the other human rights activists, civil society activists who are fighting to end the dictatorship, LGBTQ people are determined to get back on track to what they had been looking forward to achieving with a legally and democratically elected government led by the National League for Democracy, NLD. With me today are two speakers I've had the pleasure of getting to know in this past week. Okar Minmaung, and that's his stage name. He is the first openly gay actor in Myanmar. He was born Ye Tu Keng Win, and he spent 24 years in his home country, and then he moved to the US, to New York, for studies. He returned to Myanmar in 2016 and played the lead role in Myanmar's first gay movie that's called The Gemini, which is a love story between two men. Okar returns to Myanmar once a year and he participates in the Yangon Pride marches and activities. He's known to LGBT communities in Myanmar. He was recommended to me and to Outright by LGBT advocates who we know inside the country. Oka has also participated in the anti coup protests in New York City, where he lives. In my first conversation with Okar, this is what he said to me. He said, I'm so angry that the military is using its power to support a dictatorship. We cannot let our country be like North Korea. During the Black Lives Matter movement, the whole world participated, but many people who are not Burmese don't know what it's like to live under Myanmar military dictatorship. I heard about Chrissy Ong from Okar. Chrissy is a Burmese American transgender actress living in Los Angeles. She was born and raised in Myanmar and moved to the US, also for studies, 15 years ago. Chrissy plays a leading role in the movie Imperfectly Complete, a trans woman's love story. She supports legal protections for same sex couples in Myanmar and removing 377 of the Penal Code, which criminalizes carnal intercourse against the order of nature. Chrissy says LGBTQ people in Myanmar deserve to live our lives meaningfully with laws and policies that will protect our safety and dignity. And she uses social media to publicize arrests of LGBT people in Myanmar. So, for our program today, Okar will speak, and then he has put together a short series of images of what's happening in Myanmar. And then after we see that video, Chrissy will present. And after Chrissy's presentation, I will do a short presentation as well of messages, some stories that were shared with me by LGBT advocates inside the country. And then we will go to Q&A, question and answer and discussion. Please type in your questions in the chat box, and please use the panelists and attendees chat. We will pick up your questions, read them out aloud, and the responses will be live rather than in the chat box. I've been told that some people might write or type their comments in Burmese in chat, and that's fine. Please feel free to do that. Okar and Chrissy will pick up your comments in Burmese, translate them into English so that we can all know what it is that you're saying and you can participate in the discussion. So with that, Okar, I turn it over to you.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, honorable ambassadors. My name is Okar Myanmar. So yeah, as you all already are aware, the basic human rights and freedom of the people of Myanmar are under an imminent threat. The vast majority has been fighting passionately to regain their freedom. Currently, there is a nightly internet cut-off to prevent the information on what the military is doing from becoming public. For example, nightly raids and unlawful arrests of those who dare to oppose them, who have the audacity to reject their reign and take part in the civil disobedience movement. In the recent days, the military violence has escalated to a deadly level. Many people have been violently struck down, shot to the head, beaten and unfairly detained. We have seen stories such as Kai at 19 years old and Wei Yanton at 16 years old, and so many unfortunate others of all ages, all of whom suffer greatly in the pursuit of regaining the freedom of Myanmar. Now, we must ask questions. Why are people being shot? Why are unarmed people being killed? And why are police using live rounds? Are we at war? No. We are peacefully protesting for our rights. Every day, the people of Myanmar encourage each other to participate in peaceful protests and refrain from violence. We will not resort to violence because violence doesn't bring stability or peace to a nation in unrest. During the 1988 revolution, the military regime had provoked the public into committing violent acts. They then blamed the protesters for causing civil unrest and chaos, using this as a reason for taking over the country under military dictatorship for decades. We, as a new generation of protesters, have vowed not to let our emotions dictate our actions. In the midst of all this, the LGBTQ community has been participating from all angles to aid in our revolution becoming a success. In the past, the people of the LGBTQ community have been treated as though they suffer from mental illness, negative impulses, or corruption to their moral being. Always have we being considered second-class citizens. Our rights are non-existent. Our daily lives were filled with oppression from decades of being crippled by military propaganda. We have faced a lack of career advancement opportunities and constitutional protections. In the past 5 years, the country has come to a higher level of acceptance, allowing for Pride Festival and celebration of our rights. We still have a hard fight ahead of us in changing the status of our constitutional rights and recognition of our freedom. Unfortunately, this military dictatorship put us at a fork in the road. We can either, as a community, stay isolated and is grateful for slowly gained rights we obtain during a synthetic power sharing democracy, or fight alongside people who may even have rejected and shunned our community before in the fight of the civil disobedience movement. What my brothers and sisters of the LGBTQ community must understand is that we must put aside past conflicts, opinion, allegations, and treatment of those who have been against us and become part of a united force. Even if one person's rights are taken from them, no matter nationality, no matter gender, no matter sexuality, or no matter class, we all suffer. Myanmar needs our help, and we must come together to give it. Not after the civil disobedience movement is over, not after the protests have died down, and definitely not under military rule. So please, I must urge all of you globally to consider participating in this movement, to take a strong action against the military regime, to show strength and fearlessness, achieving peace and democracy. We cannot stand and watch as lives are taken, chaos ensue, and degradation of our country occur. Please stand with us. We need the help from the international community to take immediate action against these responsible for the coup, as well as their family members and supporters in the US and other countries. First and foremost, we ask that the international community stop recognizing the military regime and legally recognize the authority of the 2020 election winners in Myanmar, led by the National League of Democracy. Secondly, we need your help to take immediate action against those responsible for the coup by making them face strong consequences according to the international laws against human rights abuse and genocides. The Myanmar military must get more concrete consequences. Sanctions, international statements, and requests from UN and the international governments are not enough. Not enough. The military leaders do not and will never recognize such actions as something that is effective. So thank you all for your time and consideration. And your help is very much appreciated. Things will surely go a lot farther if we all put it together. Thank you. So I just would like to show some photos of it. And when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Okar, for sharing your thoughts and your message with us and for the images. Chrissy, do you want to take over now?
Ready. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and honorable diplomats, activists, and guests. As all of you have known and heard Myanmar Burma voices clearly about recent military coup on February 1st, 2021. As a member of Myanmar LGBTQ community and Burmese American actress, I'm deeply concerned and strongly oppose the detention of democratically elected members of government, including State Councillor Daw Aung San Suu Kyi and President U Win Myint and other elected parliament representatives, political leaders, students, journalists, media workers, and students, and many other civilians as well. The Assistant Associate for Political Prisoner for Burma, AAPP, reported on February 24 that at least 728 people had been arrested since the coup, with 666 still detained, although this number may be much higher. From February 1st to the 24th, there have been 8 confirmed deaths and many more serious injuries. And on February 24, military supporters attacked residents using sharp objects, knives, heavy sticks, and slingshots. 4 people had serious head injuries. 8 others had injuries to the hand and legs and arms. Military supporters continued to attack peaceful demonstrators and civilians. Residents in several cities are reported to have formed right watch groups to deter mobs and protecting themselves instead of protecting by police. I also concerned, before I go over that, let me say about some citizens in every city are living with fear and uncertainty future, including senior citizens, pregnant women, and children. I also concern and worry at the harassment and attack on younger Generation Z. Generation Z is the most important social group, and they involved in anti-coup demonstration as leading role. It is important, demographic, and covers broad swaths of economy. Its members are students, professionals, artists, LGBTs, and many active social groups. Military authority restrict the internet, telecommunication, social media, especially Facebook, because Facebook is so popular in Myanmar and everybody using it as a communication tool, which violates the basic human rights and freedom of expression. And military authorities has warned anti-coup protesters in across the nation that they could face longer years in prison term if they obstruct the armed forces. They also gave itself the power to make arrests, carry out searches, and hold people for more than 24 hours without the warrants or lawful procedures. People are still worrying because a curfew is still existing, which is people cannot go out on the street between 8 p.m. to 4 p.m. But in this curfew time, for the police and soldier to arrest student leaders and activists. With the democratic elected government, all LGBT people in Myanmar have a chance to get the legal protections. We can advocate sexual orientation and human rights on the agenda. At least we have a chance to fight for our rights. But with the military coup, there is no chance. For me, being a trans person, I'm concerned because We don't know what is happening to the people in the police custody or in the jail if you are a trans person or you look different because of your clothing, gender identity, and appearances. We all are vulnerable to all kinds of violation by police officer or authorities based on what we know of transgender people before the coup. When LGBT people got detained or arrested by the police, there is no way to contact them or protest as LGBTQ basic rights. We are not saying we LGBT people are special or special violation in this anti-coup demonstration. Most people are not thinking about LGBT people at all when they think about the coup. Even in the UN, when they talk about human rights violation or in news, people are not thinking or considering about LGBT people. When someone is detained or arrested by the police in this demonstration, we don't know who is LGBT because authorities are not providing information who has been arrested or detained. You cannot even get help because nobody knows who is there. Finally, the aim and the goal and the purpose of today's webinar is to help people to see that LGBTQ people are part of the peaceful democracy movement and they are fighting to get the democracy. But they all are also vulnerable. And we only see many openly LGBT activists on peaceful demonstration, and they are holding anti-coup banners with rainbow flags. But there are many more other people who are not holding rainbow flags, who are also LGBT. In some remote states in Myanmar, people are taking photographs if you are holding rainbow flags and sending it to the police. In other words, they are not visible, but they are fighting for democracy with civil disobedience movement. We condemn these brutal attacks and demand to the military council that to release Daw Aung San Suu Kyi and U Win Myint and other detainees immediately and unconditionally. I would like to urge international community to join and stand along with Myanmar people and promote awareness, campaigns, and encourage your country government to take effective action with humanitarian aid urgently for recent crisis, which threatens democracy and universal human rights. LGBT rights are also human rights, and we all have to be united at front to create a safe and peaceful environment in which Myanmar LGBTQ people can thrive to live with dignity. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chrissy. The speech and the comments that Okar and Chrissy have shared with us today will be available on Outright's website. So if you would like to read or see the presentations that you have heard today, please go to our website probably Monday and you'll be able to access that. Thank you. I'd like to do a short presentation now. Em, can I please have the PowerPoint?
Yes, do you want me to show your slides, Grace?
I could, let's see if I can share my screen.
Let me know if not, I'm happy to put them up.
Sure. Maybe you could.
No problem. Okay, let's get this playing.
Great, Thanks, Sam. So as you all are aware, can we see the first slide, the next slide, please? Thanks. As you all are aware, on February 1, the military seized power in Myanmar and they displaced and overthrew the democratically, legally elected government that was in place, and they were elected November 8th, 2020. And since February 1, over the past 26 days, people in Myanmar are living under a crisis. Hundreds and thousands of people have been marching peacefully in the civil disobedience movement known as the CDM. They've been in sit-ins. They've been met by police trucks, water cannon trucks, armed military and police, and as Okar has mentioned, armed forces that have actually begun harming, hurting, and as Chrissy mentioned, killed several people across different cities. Many people in the service sector, from medical workers to bankers to engineers to students, are on strike. You may have seen images on television as well as on social media, what they call the pot banging party, quote unquote party, where people are banging pots and pans in solidarity with one another, as well as to clearly send a message that they are against the military dictatorship. And there is a curfew that goes into effect at 8 p.m. until about 4 a.m. in the morning. And what we are hearing from activists inside the country is that these curfews are used as an opportunity to actually do mass arrests of people in their homes. So I'd like to go to the next slide. So in this context of the crisis in Myanmar, as Okar and Chrissy have shared, LGBTIQ people are very much a part of the civil disobedience movement, very much joining with everybody else as people of Myanmar to say, we don't want this, and that we are opposed to the dictatorship. And this is the call that you see in many of the marches, the 3 R's: release our leaders, that is the democratically elected leaders from November 8, 2020, respect our vote, and reject the military coup. Next slide, please. So what I'm doing is that in the next few slides, I'm sharing some messages, statements, stories that were shared with me from LGBT advocates inside Myanmar over the last few days. And I thought that I would actually read out what they have shared. I'm not doing justice to their voice because of the way that they were actually speaking, the tone and the ferocity and the emotion with which they spoke, but I thought that I would voice their words. This statement is from an LGBT activist in Myanmar who says, "I can't imagine how our life will be if this crisis continues. It's been 26 days. Everything has changed. We can't eat or sleep well because at night there are arbitrary arrests. They are shooting people on the streets. Protesters in different cities have been shot dead. Everyone is at risk and in danger. We are afraid of being arrested and disappeared." Next slide, please. I asked a number of the people I spoke with, can you talk about your experiences as LGBT people? Like, are you going through particular violations? Are you particularly vulnerable? Are you being targeted? Do you have requests and asks from the international community? And this is what at least 2 of them said, and I think this echoes what several LGBT activists feel. At this point, LGBT people are not even thinking about special rights or demands. We are all in Myanmar going through the same thing together. LGBT or non-LGBT, our goal is to get rid of the dictatorship. Next slide, please. This is an image of LGBT people who are participating in the civil disobedience movement. Next slide, please. An activist who has been working with the community for several years said that in the past, LGBT people did not really talk about human rights. They were not aware, they were not familiar with the concept and the language, except for a few leaders of LGBT movements, perhaps based mostly in Yangon. This has changed now, that across the country, young people, people from different generations are beginning to talk and demand human rights. And this is what one of them said. We participate in the civil disobedience movement as LGBT individuals. In every city, even smaller towns, people have been out every day. Different generations of LGBTQ people join the CDM. In the past, LGBT don't talk about human rights. Now their voices are very strongly supporting human rights. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, this is an activist who is very active and very involved in the CDM. And he talks about how he had to change his strategy and tactic of staying alive, staying safe, and staying active. And this is what he says. Lots of arrests are happening at night. Curfews are abused. People are arrested at home. I don't speak to media. The media are only interested in talking to flamboyant LGBT people in front of marches. I've changed to leading protests from behind. I'm trying to keep myself safe. Next slide, please. In the northeast of Mandalay, which is a city that is, I don't know how many kilometers, how many miles away from Yangon, but in the northern part of the country, one group of people who I talked to, representatives from that group, this is what they said. Our lesbian and transgender group walked with rainbow flag. Some media and NGO persons took photos and gave our information to police. That night, police searched. They asked, who are the leaders? What is this organization? That's why we don't do demonstration with LGBT flags. We don't use makeup, no colorful clothing. In the mornings, we keep marching, but at night, we don't go back to where we stayed. And the reason for that is because they are followed, it's because their homes are under watch. So people are participating in every way possible. But I think this is an important statement, like some of the statements others have made, that there's a whole notion of visibility, and that we have to ask ourselves, those of us who do not live in Myanmar or live under these kinds of crisis situations, what is visibility? What is the notion of visibility? How can we be visible, and what is invisibility? So I hope maybe we can have a discussion on that. Next slide, please. I hope I pronounced this correctly. In Mid-Kenya, which is the capital of Kachin State, which is in the northern part of the country, I received this example of what's been going on there. LGBT people who joined the civil disobedience movement happened to get trapped in a small lane. And while they were trapped in that lane, they were shot at by police. The protesters ran away and no one was arrested. Now, I was told this was not an LGBT targeted incident, but the importance of this example is that police were shooting at peaceful protesters, and that LGBT people who were part of the protest are just as vulnerable. And in this particular instance, those who were shot were a group of LGBT people. Next slide, please. I think that this march was in Yangon. It might have been the march last week on the 19th, Friday. Next slide, please. One of the organizers of the march in Yangon last week said this: "We usually do LGBTQ pride parades in Myanmar in February between the 15th and the 28th. This time, we are doing protest marches and demonstrations. On the 19th of February, 1,500 LGBTQ people marched about 7 kilometers to the heart of downtown Yangon. On February 26th, which in Yangon would have been for our last night, on February 26th, there will be a bigger demonstration in Yangon and other cities. We will keep doing it weekly." Next slide, please. So what is the significance of LGBT people participating? As Chrissy has said, and Okar has said, there were attitudes about LGBT people in the past. There is a certain risk to being LGBT and participating visibly, openly in the civil disobedience movement, but it has actually generated positive comment. And this is what one of the activists said: Myanmar society usually don't accept LGBT people. They say LGBT are not good for the nation. But now people are surprised to see LGBT people on the streets participating in the CDM. LGBT are getting positive feedback. This is happening not only in Yangon, but also across the country. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is one of my last slides. Several advocates who have been working with the NLD to get LGBT rights recognized, and who actually have spent a long time talking with people in the NLD so that they're being inclusive. And LGBT issues, LGBT rights are included in the manifesto of the National League for Democracy, the NLD. And this is what two of the advocates said, and I have synthesized what they've said. I was very positive about LGBT decriminalization because, as you know, LGBT people, same sex is criminalized in Myanmar under the former British colony law, which is 377. So advocates are saying, I'm very positive about LGBT decriminalization. In the NLD-led government, many members of parliament are super supportive for LGBT rights, and I was looking forward to working with them. Now, with the military junta, who don't know anything about human rights, what can LGBT expect? There's no freedom of expression, no freedom of peaceful assembly, no human rights at all. Next slide, please. So I'll end with this. Even at this point where people are united, where LGBT people are coming together, strong voices with common goals, remove the military, respect our vote, and return us to democracy, there are different opinions among the groups, and they hold different positions on whether to engage with the military if the military stays in power. And these have implications for Myanmar's LGBT communities. One point of view is we will not collaborate with the dictatorship, no engagement at all. If we work with them, there'll be no respect for human rights. If the coup doesn't end, we will work at the community level. We will not work with the dictatorship. We won't legitimize the military. The second point of view is we came halfway with the previous government, but they have been replaced by the new administration. This administration has no SOGI, which stands for sexual orientation, gender identity. This administration has no SOGI and human rights awareness. We have to work with them so they can address violations against our community. Now, this may seem dichotomized or divisive, but I think what it means is that it's a significant moment. And I think it is, Okar may have said this, that there's a fork in the road. And so these points of view do have implications for the Myanmar LGBT communities. I'll go to my last slide. So please join Outright to help disseminate stories of the civil disobedience movement and LGBTQ people in Myanmar who are protesting the coup and fighting to end the military dictatorship. It's very important that we keep an international eye on Myanmar because the military hopes that attention will fade. And we are Outright, as well as several international organizations, as well as civil society organizations in Asia and also within Myanmar, are leveraging influencers to pressure the military to restore the elected leadership, release civilians, immediately seize all military violence, police violence, and what is called contract mob violence, where people from the community who are pro-military vigilantes are being paid to commit acts of violence against protesters of the civil disobedience. And finally, help us to respond positively to calls for support for Myanmar LGBTIQ groups. Thank you very much. Thanks, Em. So we'll go to questions now, and we'll take questions from the chat box. Chrissy and Okar, please feel free to just jump in and speak.
Hey, Grace, I also wanted to flag for you, there's some questions in the Q&A area.
Okay.
So if they aren't in the chat, you can also look there.
Okay. All right. All right. So may I call out people's names? I'm assuming I can because the name is in the chat. Cameron Wolf says, comments, I'm very saddened by the situation, and yet the strength and resilience on community is inspiring and hopefully can help shape future visibility. And the question is for the speakers, for Oka and Chrissy, can you discuss healthcare workers from the government sector have left their posts, and this is critical for people living with HIV. I have also heard this and what the implications of this. Chrissy and Okar, do you want to comment on that?
Can you please repeat the question again?
Yes. What are the impacts of healthcare workers in the government sector, in government hospitals and health facilities, leaving their jobs, leaving their posts? How is this affecting people living with HIV who need their medications?
I'm sure there will be definitely impact for all the HIV patients, and the thing is, like, there are so many negative consequences because of CDM movement, and we all know that that is the only way to win in this battle. So I'm pretty sure they will find other way around, or probably what they are, the doctors and the patient, they can, I mean, if they can directly discuss and talk about it, because like even now myself, like me and my sister, we created a website which is like everyone can post it, and the share it, or whoever wants to donate it, or the place or money, or and help services, anything, and whoever need help, they can also post it and request it, so they can directly see each other instead of going to the clinic, official clinic. So we have to find a plan B and other option to take care of them, because like it is hard, it's very hard and very difficult situation, but we all have to stay strong and like brainstorm and find our way, I believe. And Chrissy, you want to say something?
Well, in this situation, people they don't even care themselves because they are taking their life. They are taking their life. They are sacrificing themselves to fight for the democracy. So they even forgot about the COVID, yeah, and HIV and everything, and they want to get back their democracy. So They don't, focus on anything right now. Their goal is to get back the democracy as present.
Um, Cameron, one of the things that I heard actually uh, earlier this week from an activist in Myanmar is that um, those who have left the government hospitals and centers have referred their patients to private services, but that the private services are located in the very close to where they live in their neighborhoods. And the individuals who are receiving medications and are receiving counseling from HIV clinics and centers are reluctant to go to these private centers because they are afraid of being recognized by their neighbors. So that is one of the concerns. And people are not getting the medications that they need, and they're in a quandary. I want to invite some people to actually maybe speak their questions. We can unmute them. And I'm wondering, Michael Heflin, if you would like to do that. Can we unmute Michael Heflin?
Yep, I can invite Michael to share his question. Let me just. So, Michael, you should have gotten a notification on Zoom to be able to.
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Hey, yes.
Thanks, Michael. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No problem. And thanks, Grace. And thanks, Okar and Chrissy, for providing this update. It's really distressing to hear. And of course, we've been seeing the images on TV. And as someone who's spent some time in Myanmar, it makes me very sad. The last time I was there was just over a year ago. And so it's the visual pictures in my mind are very clear. And so it's very sad to see what's happening. But my question really was, Okar, you mentioned specifically that sanctions and public statements by political leaders in other countries is not enough. And I'm curious if you have some ideas about different things that could be done by other governments or even by private individuals or corporations that might be helpful. I think, Chrissy, you mentioned some need for humanitarian support, for the protesters and including the LGBTQ community. But I'm just curious if you have some concrete ideas or if there's some ideas that civil society in Myanmar is promoting that you want to highlight.
I will say, as I talk to all of my friends and who are in the political area, and they know more about us, and what they say is I think the military government still think that this is they doing the same way as 1988, but what they forget about is this generation Z are very smart, and what they are capable of to do so many things, and they just don't know about it. Or now, especially even the Myanmar military army websites or all these Facebook account has been taken off or from the Facebook forever. Also, we all of us, millions of people has been demonstrating and protesting on the street, and also as I said, the CDM is the only way to win this battle, and we still need help from other country and other organization or governmental people, and their sanctions and pressures, and that's what we really needed. And this is why we've been spreading that awareness. And also if ASEAN, or now ASEAN, I saw on the news that they are encouraging to do the re-election, and we know how it was, and we know how the dictator was back in the days, and they keep promising, and actually everything is under their control. So even though they give us the democracy back in the days, and it wasn't fully democracy, they still take 25% in the parliament, and it wasn't like full democracy at all. They still control behind Aung San Suu Kyi as well. So this is why, like, this time, if we lose, we're gonna be in a dictatorship for we don't even know how many more years. So that's why we need more pressure from all other countries and government people, and more like sanctions, and the cut off all the business connection, especially because like the government they are connecting with so many countries for their business. Actually, they take over all the business in Burma. To be honest, that's what we don't want any country supporting them like in any ways. So that's a way we can maybe they will give up. That's one of our hope. And another thing is that we're hoping for the reconciliation with Aung San Suu Kyi and talk openly on live TV and what do you want and what they wanted. You know, like that's what we really wanted. Now we all are so worried about what's happening to our president and our mother Aung San Suu Kyi and so many leaders and governmental people they arrested and unlawfully. So like this is very illegal and this is very brutal that what they have done, and we need more participation from everyone, all the organization um, to protect us, to protect all our Myanmar civilian and citizens, and yeah. So we still looking finding out the way whatever we can do, and yeah. I
Chrissy,
hope
did
this is
you?
the right answer.
Yes, I think that we need to find the donors countries and private donors and who like to donate humanitarian aid for the Myanmar crisis. This is the best way because 1988 demonstration took place more than 4 months. So this time we don't know how long it's going to take. So the first step is we need to win the CDM. After that, all the leaders or all the organization over there, they will think about it, how they're going to move forward. But at the meantime, people are need humanitarian aid because that government employees participated in CDM if he is a household member and if he or she live in government assigned housing. As soon as they participate in CDM, they may have to remove. So they need to find a housing, shelter, foods, everything. So we need this help urgently to help people to continue to survive.
Thanks, Chrissy.
So yeah, if every countries participate in CDM, I hopefully that dictatorship will be end, and they're using gun control and everything. So yeah, hopefully every country in the world cut off the business and any tie with Myanmar military.
Right now, is we are seeing US and European countries are so active, but not other countries as that much. So we do need to make social media awareness. And because the other country government will involve if their citizens are talking about it. So I talked to my friend Alex, and he mentioned me about it as well. And we have to encourage like other countries, other citizens to ask their government and to make action effectively.
Yeah, on behalf of all these Myanmar citizens, we really appreciate all these international TV channels and medias and celebrities are covering and posting and sharing about what's happening in Myanmar on Twitter and social media. We do really appreciate it, and we like to request to keep doing it, to participate more. That's the only way, like we we will achieve our goal and to win this battle.
I'd actually like to invite King Oe, who's raised a good question, which nicely segues with what Chrissy and Okara are saying. King, do you want to voice your question and comment?
Well, yes, I put it there on the
Mm-hmm.
chat box actually.
Yeah.
I was thinking, yeah, what we can do as private citizens outside Myanmar. One thing is, as a sign of solidarity, we could all of us put the photograph of this poster 3R as our profile picture. So as many as people, we put that as profile picture, and to show that we are in solidarity with the people there in Myanmar. What do you think of that idea?
That's a really good idea. It's also like spreading the awareness, and we, as behalf of Myanmar people, we will be really much appreciated because like a lot of people like whoever live in other countries, they don't know what and how the dictatorship was. They don't know how it is. And we
Yeah.
only, I mean, they see, oh yeah, in Myanmar is demonstrating, oh yeah, Myanmar is what's happening. That they just see like, they probably might just see like that's what's happening in Burma. Actually, it is more serious than what other people think, you know, like, so this is why people are so scared and they don't want to go back to the dark era that what we faced before. So we will be much appreciated for the changing the photo on Facebook and also sharing the awareness. And, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's better we have to use all social media to promote the awareness. That's a most effective way from the outsider and to get the other country to get more attention.
Yeah. Also, another thing is like Myanmar National TV and Myauri, they are spreading and they showing so many fake news and they creating so many things that's not even existed. And this is really like disturbing. It's really annoying. So we really hope no other neighbor countries or whoever watching that on satellites or anything believe what they show. You know, only Burmese people know who are watching, and we know that that is not true. So even the national TVs are lying, and also the national newspaper are lying. So yeah, this is why all these Burmese people and we are acting hub in the national community to share what really happening, and we do really appreciate it for your help.
Anybody else wants to say anything or comment?
I see one question that I'm curious if the changes in LGBTQ laws in Myanmar neighborhood, in particular in India, Nepal, and Bhutan, has changed my or legal adjudication recoup in Myanmar by paranoid, right? What do you think, Chrissy? Do you see that question?
My Zoom is something wrong. Hold on, let me.
I can read out the question. Shall I read out the question, Chrissy?
Yes.
Yeah. So Pronoy Rai says, I'm curious if the changes in the LGBTIQ laws in Myanmar's neighborhood, meaning neighboring countries, in particular in India, Nepal, and Bhutan, has changed minds or legal adjudication pre-coup in Myanmar.
So, because as you mentioned earlier, and we have a hitting law that we are not using at all, and it is on our head. That the law is Section 377, and they can bring the law anytime to intimidate or to take action or to any LGBTQ people. So we need to remove that law. But right now is to getting back the democracy is the most important thing right now. People are not asking because of democracy is getting back democracy is more important. And then before the coup, we get with the NLD government is all the LGBTQ got freedom, but the law hasn't changed yet. So maybe they are working on it and we don't know when they're going to change the new law. But at the time that military took over the power. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear.
Hello, do you see my screen? Because my screen is not working for some reason.
Okay, so it looks like if we don't have any other pending questions in chat, and if nobody else would like to add anything, we could wrap up early. Is that okay, Okar and Chrissy?
Yeah.
Yes, we are okay with that.
Okay. So everyone, thank you so much for joining this webinar. The recording of this webinar, as well as several materials, briefs and information, civil society statements that have been put out. We will put all of that on Outright's website, as well as the speeches that Okar and Chrissy shared today. Thank you so much. And please feel free to be in touch with Okar and Chrissy directly if you need to. Thank you.
If whoever need anything, you can feel free to contact me via my email okar.minmg@gmail.com. Also my social media, Okar Myanmar. But they spells differently. And Mao is like MAUNG. Or Instagram, yeah. And anytime if you need anything that I can participate or help, I'm willing to do it. Thank you so much, Alrex and Grace and Em and everyone, whoever watching this, for giving your time and being. It's an honor to be part of it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining
Thank you,
us,
everybody.
especially Grace and all the facilitator and Oka and all the guests. We must win.
I truly appreciate. Thank you. Bye.